Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Threads of Social Change, Threads of Change. And we are happy to have you today. My name is Daintyann Barrett Smith. I am a trained social worker and social development practitioner. For this episode, we are focusing on wealth building for social workers. And this is important because as more and more we look around, many professions, a lot of persons are speaking on the importance of having multiple streams of income or ability to really make use of the skill sets that we have to ensure we have a stable financial future. And of course, I heard earlier in the previous session, they were talking about the variety of skill sets that social workers have. So this episode is really for us to look at how can we monetize, how can we make good on the skill sets we have to secure ourselves financially. With me here, I have three guests with me here today. Dr. Veronica Hardy, Miss Erica Allen, and of course, Miss Eva Forde. And I am just going to ask all our guests to give us a brief introduction of themselves. Just tell us your name, your organization or profession, and your social media handle, and what your social work passion is. And we will start with Dr. Hardy, sorry.
Yeah, so greetings, everyone. It's great to be here today, and I appreciate the invitation. Currently, I am a university professor at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, US. And I will tag in that one of my passions is racial equity. And even more specifically, race-based trauma. So those are just some of those areas that I tend to focus on. And I'll say as far as my handle, that would primarily be my website at drveronicahardy.com.
You're on mute, Dainty, but I'm assuming.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
So,
yeah.
First, I have to shout out some of my colleagues that I see online. Of course, Erica, we're going to get to you, but Sandra Latavadere is there. Dr. Leslie Yaffa is there. And the other thing is I'm seeing names that I'm not sure some ladies you might have gotten married, so I'm not sure if it's you or you changed the last name or not. But I started my social work journey in terms of the money part of it, I should say. In fact, let me go back. Eva Forde is my name. Rich Social Worker is my game, my social media handle. I'm also the founder of the Social Work Wealth Conference, where Dr. Hardy actually is on the executive of that. And I'll show you the magazine that she helped us publish in a minute. But what's so funny is that my first foray into social work as an entrepreneur, Erica Allen, was one of my contracted social workers. So I'm excited for the conversation today. I have a YouTube channel called Rich Social Worker. So, and I used to be the Jamaica Association of Social Workers president. So some of you may know me from that.
Okay, great stuff. And then if we could hear from Miss Allen, Miss Erica Allen.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Like Eva, there are a lot of people that I know on here, people who I work with, who I've had work with in the past. So hello, everybody who I've not seen in a while. I hope it's going well. For me, let me start with my passion. My passion is always people. And I am a people person for people who know me. So everything that I do is centered around that. And comparing that with social work, everything goes hand in hand when I try to uplift, encourage, and motivate my clients. I also am a part-time lecturer at the University of the West Indies. I consult on various projects. I am a program developer. I do proposals, all the gamuts of social work that you can possibly think about. That's what I try to do. At least I think I am doing that, as well as most recently, I have developed several books to help persons who are going through emotional distress, as well as our social work students and social workers as it relates to case management.
Wonderful. I love the diversity of our guests, and I'm looking forward to a rich discussion. I'm just going to put a plug in here to say I'm not sure if all the guests we have online are trained social workers, but the University of the West Indies does have a master's program, a master's in social work. So you will see in the comment section a link that is dropped there. You can go and check out the brochure. It's a very good program, and we are looking forward to hearing about the people that have joined the profession in that regard. Also, if you want, you can follow us. Our social media handle on IG is UWI Mona Social Work Unit. Go as well as to our LinkedIn page. And so I'm just going to jump straight into the discussion. Wealth building, it's on everybody's tongue these days, not just because of the toughness of the economic time, but everybody's looking at how can you establish security for generations to come, you know? And so I want to kick off the discussion first thing with what are some of the misconceptions in terms of wealth as a social worker. And I'm going to throw it out to the team, to the panel, and see whoever picks up first. But we'd love to start there in terms of how are we going to shift our mindset? And the first place is, what is wrong with our thinking at this time?
Ooh,
It's such a good question.
I have so much to say. And actually, you touched on a couple different things. I'll say this, and I'm going to try to be brief. You feel free to cut me off. So I moved to Jamaica financially okay. I could pay my bills. It was in Jamaica that I started with social worker because I got broker than I was. And one of the things I realized was, you know, it's social work. Listen, if you're in it, whether it's social work or any service driven job, right? That is a noble profession. We have meaning built into what we do every day. We don't have to wake up and wonder, is what I'm doing mattering? We don't have to wake up and wonder that. But the financial piece is so important. And what I recognized while I was in Jamaica and going through my own financial crisis was that there was something wrong with our picture as social workers. So, and what I realized was there's two parts of the problem, or maybe three. One part of the problem, a lot of people want to say, oh, organizations should pay us more. They should understand our value. That's a problem if we're looking for other people to validate us. Before number two, we validate ourselves. So that's really how it needs to go, right? We have to understand that, hold on, I have skills that are super valuable in the marketplace outside of maybe a social work context. We're in this kind of social work bubble or service-driven bubble a lot of times, right? So we're using terms that don't necessarily translate to money to business professionals. But if we were to use the terms that they use, they could understand that, right? So that was the second part of it. So we as the service provider have to understand that we've got to do some mindset shifts ourselves, take ownership of, you know, how the language that we're using, how we are assessing our value. And then we need to not just have a job, but learn how to package our skills. Dr. Hardy was talking about how, you know, she has a passion for, you said race-based violence, right?
Race-based trauma.
Race-based trauma. But then also Dr. Hardy has books that don't necessarily have to do specifically with race-based trauma and services in that way, right? So I believe it's a three-part process, training organizations, institutions on how to value us, understanding ourselves, what our value is, so that we can translate that, and packaging those skills. I'll hand it off.
All right, let me jump on what Eva is saying, since I'm in Jamaica still. What I find first, let me put my handle out there, my social media handle. It's we.listen on Instagram and on TikTok. What I find is a misconception about social workers as it relates to wealth is that we are restricted to a particular type of service. meaning you find a lot of persons where when they ask you about social work, they talk about service agencies. They talk about work centered around that, not even thinking outside of the box one, outside of the scope of the services that you are able to provide, especially in today's society where there are a lot of coaches, there's all kind of personal development. People are always interested in being better. There's always an avenue for you to parlay your skills as a social worker based on your training. That is one. Two, how to market the skills that you have as a service. Two, and to look around and see how best you can come up with other ideas that may not necessarily come from your social work training, but also come from the experiences that you have had and the gaps that you see. So that is how I look at it.
And I think Eva and Erica captured so much in what they said. And I'll just add this other piece of how many of you have, say, entered in the profession, but even in your educational journey, someone said, you know what? You must be going into this because you love it, because you're certainly not going to make any money. Has anyone ever heard that before? So there was this tradition kind of implanted in us at the student basis, right? That we're not going to make any money. And that transitioned into our expectations. Oh, it's okay to make this type of salary because, you know, we just don't make any money. But certainly that is starting to shift now, because just like Eva said, we need to realize our value, but we also need to be able to communicate our value and teach the community what social workers actually do, and stop letting media and portrayals in movies speak that for us, because often it's misconstrued, right? And then also understanding that we can create positions. We are not limited to specific job postings or certain types of job postings, but we can take time to really create what we want to see in our careers based on the skills that we have and how we want to add value to our communities.
Yes, I think that what the common thing I'm hearing is that we have to be advocates for ourselves, and being in the field so much, there has not been much appreciation for what's the social component. But I would want to say that now, with how things are evolving, they're recognizing that the social is really the base of it. And I think it's just an opportune time for social workers to make the most of that in carving out our space. So on that note, I would want to move into just our next question, unless Doctor, unless we would just want to respond to the financial challenges that social workers have. What are some of the strategies that they could utilize in overcoming some of those and to build wealth? What are some of those strategies?
I'll just say this, and I'm speaking as someone who cut her teeth in Jamaica working with social workers. When I say cut her teeth, I mean around this topic, this specific topic. And I want to just empathize with us, because it's not easy financially, right? Just off the top. We're not paid enough. And I mean, social workers around the world have that same complaint, but it really is challenging when you're in a developing country and you're wanting to kind of move forward, and you're in an organization or looking for a job, right? We've got social workers. I know up until a couple of years ago anyway, we had more social workers graduating than we had, jobs, whether it was private or in the corporate sector. And so I really want to empathize with us. That said, it has to, again, I go back to, it has to start with us as social workers, as professionals. Pretend your degree doesn't have the word social work in it, right? Then what do you have? That's what you market. That's what you apply for. I think a lot of us get caught up with the label or the box of social work, and then we don't know how to get out of it. So to answer your question, Dainty, I think, again, it starts with us kind of thinking, again, outside of that box and outside of the social work box. Listen, you're going to be a social worker regardless, wherever you go. You're going to take those skills, you're going to take that training, you're going to take that mindset, you're going to take those values and ethics. So I really, that was a challenge that I saw over and over when I spoke with us, especially students, just not understanding how to take off those, the social work framing, right? Because if you don't take it off, right, then others will not be able to really understand what you're asking for, what your value is, what you're giving. I feel like a broken record. So that's all I'll say about that.
I don't know if any of our other guests have a comment on that in terms of breaking free from those challenges.
I can add a little bit to that. Eva is right when she said that we need to break out of that mindset. But I think it also goes back to something Dr. Hardy says, where the students, when they come in, because a lot of our students come in with an idea, concept of what social work is. And during the course of practice, then they get a better sense through practicum and all of the other things that they're exposed to, what social work really is. So I think at that level, we should definitely talk about the scope that they can work in, look at other things outside of the traditional rules that are out there, traditional rules highlighted by the media, things like that. Try to get them to think, but think about what it is that they could offer, what they could provide outside of the scope of what the social agencies are delivering out there. Because we are in a society where AI, technology, all of the things are happening. I always say to my students, no matter what happens, people will be people. People will always need social support. They'll always need emotional support. So you will always be relevant. It's just to find a place and find a space that you can fit and service people. So getting them to think like that, I think, will be the foundation of getting them to not box themselves in.
And I love this. I'm going to tag on to what Erica said too. When I speak to my students, I really try to get them to think outside of the box. And I let them know, social workers are senators, right? They sit in the government too. Social workers are actors. They own companies. They work globally. So to expand the thinking that just looking for jobs that have that social work title can be limiting. What you're going to do is exactly what Eva said. If you remove that and look at that, I would say this box, this whole toolbox of skills and knowledge that you have, how do they line up with these different jobs that you see out there? And that could be a significant part of your career. So really expanding how we think, expanding how our skills and knowledge can be applied. And that may come in different titles based on that particular workplace.
That's a really valid point. And one thing that I've seen someone use ChatGPT to do is actually just putting the role in ChatGPT and asking it what skills, what social work skills would be applicable in this job. Because the point you raised about the label, I think Ms. Forde, Eva raised it before, and you also alluded to it. We get boxed in with that. And so from a capacity building standpoint now, what materials, what are we recommending? What's the best thing for us to consume in changing that mindset? Not just thinking differently, but having the right information. What are there books? Are there webinars? Where do we go really to learn how to do it properly? Where do we go for that?
There's a conference.
Oh, I know you're plugging for your conference. Tell us about it,
Oh,
Eva.
shameless plug. Shameless plug. Social Work Wealth Conference. Are you kidding me?
Oh, well, tell us about it right away,
Listen,
please.
okay. I'll just say how I started. Okay, those of you guys in Jamaica, do you remember it's the thing the government shut down. They said it was a scammer thing. What was it called? Where Erica, you must know this, or Sandra, you must know this, where you they were giving everybody who invested like 10-12% on their investment.
Oh, Cash Plus. Cash Plus.
Cash
Yeah.
Plus. That was Cash Plus. Got me, guys. And I had gotten a $10,000 loan from NCB. No, sorry, $1 million loan. What am I talking? 10,000 US. Million Jamaican dollar loan from NCB, right? And I put the money in Cash Plus. Why did I do that? I'm thinking I'm smart. I'm thinking I'm this master's degree social worker. I know what I'm doing. Lost everything. And that's what made me go down this journey. So I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read Think and Grow Rich. I read The Science of Getting Rich. I got into online forums where other people, not social workers at the time, no social workers were into this stuff at all. Social workers, when I first came up with Rich Social workers were the ones offended. We're not rich. We don't do that. That was over a decade ago. So you've got to get into spaces where people are talking, people are reading things that aren't necessarily found in the social work journal. Unless somebody wants to create a social work wealth journal, right? So in October, we got together, and I'm saying I'm talking about Dr. Hardy as well. And this is just the magazine that Dr. Hardy helped us to edit. It's a social work wealth magazine. And at the conference, it was a supplement to the conference. At the conference, we talked about venture capital funding. We talked about investments. We talked about real estate. We talked about having a wealth mindset. We talked about starting private practice. We talked about a gamut of things. Dr. Hardy can even share more about that, right? But the idea, some of the people that came to the conference were saying, well, we're not sure how to talk about money for social workers. I said, don't package it as if we're talking to social workers. Social workers are people. We're people who care about being financially viable. I care about it. I'm assuming you all care about it. You're here. It's a conference it's a wealth conference for people who lead with service. So even if you don't go to the social work wealth conference, go to some event, read books, get out of the box. Again, this is just reiterating the point. I want to give it to Dr. Hardy because I'd love for you to say more about this.
All right. So I'm going to keep talking about that social work wealth conference. I think that was a very pivotal shift in bringing social workers and other, what we refer to as impact professionals together to speak about wealth building strategies. From retirement to values aligned investment to budgeting, but even on top of that, how to transition our financial wellness knowledge to our clients. In other words, the populations that we serve. So it didn't just stop at us. So certainly attending conferences such as that, the Social Work Wealth magazine, it has stories and inspiration from fellow social workers, many who are entrepreneurs and recognize gaps. And that's where their entrepreneurial idea was launched in relation to those gaps. Something else that I'd like to identify is the Center for Financial Social Work. And that was launched by Rita Wolfson. I believe many of you may be familiar with her, but she is considered as the founder of the financial social work discipline. So if you are looking for webinars, Rita Wolfson does them once a month and they are free to attend. And the webinars focus on that financial literacy, that financial wellness, both for our clients, the people we provide services to, and to ourselves. And I'm going to do a shameless plug too. This is something that I write about as well. I currently have a book called Let's Talk About Finances that's available on Amazon. And what really influenced me to write that book was my students. And it came out of a presentation that I was conducting for social work students about kind of how to get out of debt, how to budget, how to be safe with their money, plan for their future. And then I just wanted to put something in writing for them. So those are just some of the ways that people could start learning more. But it's important to surround yourself with what I refer to as that energy and mentorship, around financial knowledge that's not just beneficial for us as social workers, but just as human beings and part of our life planning.
Okay, so I'll add to it. As it relates to the students, all the things that Dr. Hardy and Eva said are absolutely true. As a student, though, this is a great space to learn more information about how important it is as it relates to wealth, in terms of investment, all of the things. So avenues like this that can give information to social workers and social work students are very, very important. Also, connect with people who you know are in the profession that are so quote unquote doing it, are working in different environments, are making an impact, who are sustaining themselves, who are doing what they need to do to survive and can give you the information and mentor you that you need in order to be able to sustain yourself financially and practice. And most importantly, don't just go to spaces that you're comfortable, because a lot of us like to stay in our comfort zones. I always try to encourage the students to, when you're doing your practicum, start at that level, go to different spaces, try to have a diverse experience. It will open your eyes to things that are happening and things that you might be interested in. And you never know, you might get an idea from that space or that experience.
I would want to say, in terms of key strategies for persons in Jamaica now, what to do on the ground, there are avenues. Sometimes they have webinars, JMMB. There's sometimes real estate webinars. A lot of those information come up. Some basic things like, a lot of us didn't know before, or still may not know, that in addition to an everyday account, you need an emergency account, you need a long-term investment account. And some people even think that investing is really for the rich. A lot of us, our mindset is not that you can start an investment account with $1,000 and continually build. So what you just said speaks to getting into unfamiliar spaces. I was at the ESG forum that was mostly private sector entities, and the banking firms were talking about, how do we ensure that the borrowers of our money are doing the right thing from a social standpoint. That's a space that social workers can get into and leverage what is there, what products are there, that kind of information. And so it's interesting, because it comes back to the box that you mentioned before, Ms. Forde, that it seems to me that in all areas we are being restricted. And so today is important in getting us out of that. So I'm going to ask, what are some effective strategies for saving and for social workers? Budgeting and saving, what works?
Do you mind? Dr. Hardy is perfect for this question. Are we going to take questions from the audience at some point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will be taking, and if we can take them from I will check the chat every now and again, and if there's something related to the specific thing we're discussing, we can do that also. And if you also see any questions, Eva, that you want to respond to, that's perfectly fine.
Well, Dr. Yafa asked, how can the humility of the profession match making us money?
Mm.
And I feel
Wow.
very strongly about the history of the social work professionalization of social work in the US started with very wealthy white socialite women who were not humble because they didn't need to be humble, because their husbands had money and they had money. I was doing some research the other day and saw, I'm not going to get the number right, but Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, can't remember her name, but she's giving away billions of dollars to nonprofit organizations. That's what money is for. It's to do good. The more money we have, I think we have it. We've been trained. It's a learned helplessness in social work that money is bad. We're not supposed to have it. But this thing, when I got to Jamaica, I couldn't take it. This whole concept of we have to beg for money. I don't like that. I do not like that term, because if we have it, if we understand what it's for, if we put the value in the right place, we can take care of ourselves, and we can take care of the causes and the communities and the clients that we actually care about. So sorry, Dr. Yaffa, but that's definitely my soapbox. Money is intrinsically, there's nothing bad or good about money, but what we say about it. So that's all I'll say about that. Back to your question. And I would want to give back to Dr. Hardy.
And I'll take it. Thank you. And just to piggyback on one thing Eva said, is that our money helps to create impact. And that's something that we as social workers do as well. So having that frame too, that sometimes it does take that money to be able to create a impact in the world, right? But now, how do we budget? How do we save that money? How do we kind of create that money so that can happen? So I'm just going to ask a few questions to everyone here. You can think about answering it. You can think about processing in your personal space. But I often say, sometimes I call it a budget. Sometimes I call it, your personal money agenda, right? And the question would be, if you were to assess your personal money agenda, what would you see on it? In other words, in what directions are your finances going? Where do you see it going? Okay, certainly we're thinking housing, we're thinking education, possibly gas, fuel, food, etc. But where are some of those other directions that it's going? How are you facilitating your own money? Okay. And then after you're initially assessing, using our social work terms, your money agenda, then create a vision for what you want your money agenda to look like, right? And for that to happen, what needs to come off that agenda and what may needs to be placed onto that agenda. One thing that I've learned, I just turned 51, so I've been thinking of retirement. It's coming, it's coming. But I think of my future self, right? In 14 years, I'll be 65. So I also have to think of my future self. And for our younger generations, those in their 20s, 30s, et cetera, it's important to start thinking about your future self, because you're planning for that part of you too. Just thinking lifespan and development courses, right? Include that on your money agenda. Money that's going to be put away with each paycheck that can sit and be there for your future self, right? So I often say with analyzing your money agenda, creating a vision for it, and making adjustments to it so you can start to build savings are some of those initial steps. Okay. And I'll pause right there.
I'd want to ask Dr. Hardy, are there any templates or those types of documents that, we wouldn't have to start from scratch, or social workers could just take it and run with it? And where might we find those?
Yes. Now, I will say I do have some in my book. I know Rita Wolfson does have, she's launched into various segments, right? Through the Center of Financial Social Work, where different examples and tools are provided. So those are just a couple of examples there. And I would be more than willing to post some on my website as well. I would just need to update that particular page too, in honor of this podcast today, Threads of Change. So that could be a resource too, as far as, say, a budgeting worksheet to start navigating and assessing how you are using your money, how you are facilitating your money.
And just to run into the very next aspect of the discussion is, once now you have budgeted, you are saving, the next thing is investing. Are there instruments? And investing, I suppose it doesn't have to be on the stock market. It could be anywhere. But some of us are not particularly aware of investment. We're not sure how to do it. We're not sure what's best to invest in. Is there anything that is suitable for social workers, whether at an international stage, and then I would ask our other guests to speak to at the local stage for Jamaica. What is there that social workers could take advantage of, whether you are risk averse or you are more open to it? What can we do now in terms of investment?
I'm don't know that I'm the best person to answer this question, but I will say this from my $1 million debacle. Educate yourself first. What is a good investment? What are options for investment, right? Levels of investment. That I did not do. I thought I understood it because I speak English, and you said a word that I understand in English. But just because I understand the word doesn't mean I know how to play the game. And so I learned from that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that an asset is anything that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. I needed those very elementary terms to start to understand what made a good investment versus not a good investment. So people will say, I'm going to buy this house. It's an investment. But if it's costing you every month and it's not bringing in, unless you're renting out a room or something, if it's not bringing you in money, it's a liability. It's not an asset. I'll say it's not an asset. Maybe a good investment down the road, but you would need, I'll say I would need definitely some financial advising around that. And there are all different kinds of investments that you can make. I learned maybe about it when I started hearing Jay-Z and Beyonce were buying art as investments. I was like, how does that work? And then I read something that said, I think it was like savings accounts is the game of the day worker, the middle class. But things like luxury brands, like art, that's the game of the high earning investor. I can't play that game right now, right? So, but there are things that I can get into as an investor at this point. But I would just say, again, educate yourself first on what is investing at the baby level and then go from there.
I want to jump on what Eva said, and let me take it. She said the baby level. So the baby level is where I'll go. Be careful what you consume. So if you want to be able to set yourself up financially, consume the things that will allow you to do that. Some of us can afford to get a money coach. And there are so many, especially in Jamaica. I'm talking at the local level. There are persons who advertise themselves as money coaches. You can do your due diligence just to look at their portfolio, look at their pages, look at their success stories, and determine whether or not that person will work for you. There are also people, let me go to TikTok, that they talk about their business successes. They have businesses, they have successful businesses, and they want to share information. They're sharing information about how they go about doing it, the successes they had, the failures that they had, the places that they went to. And as simple as going into your bank. If you have a savings account, there's also an investment section in your bank. Ask to talk to one of the investment officers. Just ask questions. Educate yourself. Consume the things that will allow you to be in the position where you are going to be financially intelligent. That's the basic of what you need to do.
You know what I would want to throw in there? What about stick-to-itivity and a willingness to stick to what is required? So sometimes you have this big financial vision, but you still want to buy the nice things. You don't want to go frugal for a year, or some persons may not want to go frugal for a year. What role does that play in it, and how do you maintain the motivation to save enough to invest? And I would want to say, because there's this other book, The Richest Man in Babylon, that's also a very good book in terms of wealth building. So I want to throw that out there. What is the appetite for doing really what is required to build wealth? Is there an appetite, and how do you cultivate that?
I'll begin by saying, and this tags into what Erica and Eva said too, educating yourself first, right? Because when it comes to, like you said, that stick-to-itiveness, motivation, that takes motivation, it takes inspiration, knowledge, and also visionary thinking, right? Being able to think forward, that we don't always need to satisfy our immediate interests, our wants, right? And what can we put off? Okay, so those are some thoughts to distinguish between needs, wants, what could be satisfied now because we don't want to let go of everything, and where could I put this money into a healthier place that would serve me better? Right. And that just leads me into something else. I'd like to ask the question of, did that financial decision serve you? Did it serve you? Did it actually meet the needs that you wanted to be met? Right. And if it does not, then maybe that wasn't the greatest financial decision at that moment. And I often say to some of our younger generations, you're at a pivotal point where decisions you make now affect the next steps, right? With the degree that we choose, the cost of that degree, some of the debt that's developed. So thinking now, calculate how long it would take you to pay that debt off. And in addition to that, how much interest would accumulate. So instead of looking at the small piece of the puzzle, looking at that big picture and the total effects. And I think part of that mindset helps us to be more committed along the way when we can see long-term and when we can see big picture of how our decisions we make today can affect us tomorrow financially.
You know, one thing you said that I want to just piggyback quickly because time is going, but debt management, sometimes student loans and mortgage and so many things, are there any strategies that would be useful? Our aim is for social workers today to leave with tangible, actionable items. What can you do when there's an insurmountable debt in front of you? You're trying to come out of it. What can we do?
That is hard. I'm not gonna even lie. That is hard. So a lot of it depends too on the policies of the organizations that you're in debt to, what the flexibility that you're allowed. I know that some organizations that there's debt management where you'll get a payment plan and all of those things, but then comes the question of, am I making enough to be able to make these payments? Am I making enough to make the payments and sustain myself and my family? So you have all of that. It has brought us to the mindset where what we're discussing here, we are entrepreneurs. We have become that. So I am, for me, I'll talk about from my personal approach to it. I try to find things that won't take the bulk of my time, but I can give a real good value to. So whatever I work at, whatever service that I do, it doesn't require a significant number of time, so I can share it and do more than one thing, but I can put my expertise in it. So whatever I am delivering, I can give the best service, but it won't take up all of my time to give that service. So I try to parlay my time into multiple activities that are self-serving in the sense of my financial well-being so that I can meet the goals that I have for myself. Not everybody is capable of doing that and have the capacity to do that, but that is the mindset I think that we should strive towards, because gone are the days where you spend 8-hour days and you make minimum pay and you're struggling to make your basic bills, you are in debt, and you are so frustrated that you can't give of your true self or your most effective self to whatever service you're supplying. So that is how I look at it.
And I would just say, thanks for that, Erica. I use this, there's an author called T. Harv Eker, and he wrote a book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And he has what he calls a 6 jars method. And this is what I use to start to discipline myself around my income. And as a matter of fact, I pulled it up for you. I'll put the link in here. But essentially, it doesn't matter how much you make. I mean, if you're not making enough to cover your bills, then that's goal number one. Either you get a job that's paying more than the job that you have, or get a job if you don't have a job, or make your own job, you know, get some work, some income has to come in, right? Whether you're offering your services or you're working for someone else, but you've got to bring in income, right? And that income needs to, at the very minimum, cover your expenses. But in order to get out of debt and manage debt, you've got to be making more than your expenses every month, right? And again, that can be, you've got to be clear on what are needs, necessities, right? Versus what are the things that you just like to get. And so we're talking about those things that you absolutely need. You don't necessarily need a Netflix subscription, okay? So once you do that though, and I will say this too, it's not just about the physical strategy of moving money. There's a mental strategy that starts it all off. So that takes into account your beliefs. Do you believe that you're going to, you know, at some point get out of this debt? Or are you the one that's saying, boy, it's impossible, I'll never get out, right? It really starts there. It starts with how you talk to yourself. How do you talk to your money? Are you angry with it? Are you upset with it? Or do you welcome it in? There's this Kate Northrup, she says, how do you talk to your money, honey? And think of your money, honey, as your spouse or your significant other. And if you're saying things like, you know, oh, I never have enough, it's not like, would you say that to, you know, your partner? Like, oh, you're never around enough, and nag? That's why they're not going to be around. But if you say, I love it when you're around, you just, things are so much better when you're here. I love you so much. Pay attention to how you're talking. All of that matters. It's not just a strategy. I have, if you do go to richsocialworker.com, I've got 2 things for you, which are both amazing. Number one, the Rich Social Workers Manifesto. Listen, I get inspired every time I read it. And it's just, again, around mindset for wealth creation. And then there is, what is the other one? The other one is called Creating Your Wealthy Mindset Workbook. So that's actually like 5 steps, 5 things that you can do to create your wealthy mindset. But then again, as it relates to strategies, this podcast is great, getting around other people, having conversations. And like Dr. Hardy said, using some of those tools to kind of map out your money. Use that 6 jars method. And for some bill collectors, you might just have to set up a payment plan with them. Listen, you have the money. They want the money from you. A lot of us feel like, oh no, we have to pay this, or, you know, they're going to be mad at me. No, they want you to pay. They may scare you into paying, but you can put the brakes on some of those payments and say, listen, this is all I have for right now. So every month, this is the plan I'm going to set up. And I will give you maybe not 100% of what you want me to give you, but what I can give you is I can give you 50% until I pay these things off. You can negotiate, you can do that. And so I implore us to use our power and enrich our mindsets, pun intended, to look at some various strategies. There's all kinds of strategies.
I see a hand raised by Peter, but I'm just gonna ask a quick question. In Jamaica, it's not as easy as overseas to get part-time jobs, and I'm speaking pertaining to developing multiple streams of income so you can increase your income base and have money to invest. So I'm throwing it now out to Dr. Hardy and yourself and our other guest, as well as the persons online. Where are the spaces that we might be able to pick up part-time jobs, consultancies? Because we've already segued into the final section of the discussion, which is about growth and diversification, diversifying and monetizing our skills. But where do we find those skills? Most social workers have a 9-to-5 job. Where do you find those places that you can pick up additional roles to monetize and to get paid for?
Okay, let me jump on this one. Networking is key. networking is key. And networking doesn't mean you're in some fancy boardroom, in a fancy lounge, talking to people who have hoovers of businesses or who, no, it means talking to colleagues, talking to friends, talking to family. You'll be surprised how well I have gotten a lot of opportunity just by saying to colleagues, oh, I'm interested in doing this. Do you know of this? What is happening in this space? Network, ask people. You have to. Jamaica is a small pool of people who everybody, especially in the social work world, I think know each other. We know everyone. You go to a space where there's somebody that is not familiar. However, try to come outside of your shell. Issue that I see happening is it's socialization of people in terms of how we interact and build relationships. I think that is dying a little bit because of technology. People are so disconnected. And I see where Dr. McKenzie asked a question and ask us to highlight what are some of the things that our students who are going through it can do to make money. I know that there are jobs on campus. There are part-time jobs. There are seasonal jobs, hourly jobs. A lot of persons I know work at the call centers. There are so many other things. I know the time constraint, it's serious because you have to go to school, you have to go to work. But there are things, when I was a student, there's some nights I didn't sleep. I work at nights. So you have to think about other things that you can do outside of social work. To talk to people. Look at forums, look at job banks, look at join groups. LinkedIn has groups, Jamaican jobs have groups, Caribbean jobs have groups. You have to put yourself out there. I know it sometimes seems like, oh, they're not accessible to me. There's no way I would get, but you'll never know until you try. You'll never know until you reach out. You'll never know until you ask the question, what is happening? What can I do? From persons, ask your lecturers, ask people who are from other institutions. Just ask. That is how you'll know, because there's not necessarily a one particular space that you'll go and you'll see all those opportunities listed. So you have to look.
And I'll add, I think there's power in story for sure. Like Erica was sharing what she did, right, to earn money as she was going through school. And I think we need to get better at sharing our stories around that, right? Because now we see kind of who we are at this stage in our lives, right? But who were we when we were obtaining our bachelor's degree and our master's degree, and what were some of the things that we were doing to make it through? And I remember I worked 2 to 3 jobs while I was pursuing my bachelor's degree, and a couple of those were in factories. Doing factory work, working in group homes, certainly had an overnight job, and then had to rush to class the next morning. So you name it. And then selling things at various stores, clothes, what we call consignment shops, things such as that. So there were times I was late on my rent in those periods too. So there are definitely those types of challenges. Some of the differences now is that there's online and remote. And back in the 90s, that just wasn't as prevalent, right, as it is now. And there are several of those online or remote positions that are more global. Some that I've come across lately are positions for translators, also called interpreters or linguists. That are available out there. Persons who conduct home studies for foster care or adoption related homes. Virtual assistants are needed more on a global perspective too. They're called virtual assistants, but it could be for various organizations, or I even know a fellow social worker who has a counseling practice who also employs a virtual assistant. So there are many of these virtual and online options that may not take up many hours, many additional hours from the week, because as students, you're already extended, right? But thinking too with some of these online opportunities, which one of these can add to my resume, add to my skills, or even extend some of my social work skills.
And I just want to piggyback really quickly because Erica said, asking your lecturers. And I had a few astute students at different points when I was teaching at NCU one particular student, she came in and she said, Miss Forde, your desk is always kind of messy. Would you like some help organizing? And I said, oh my goodness, yes, I would love that. And she kind of did an assessment and she said, Miss Forde, based on this, I can come in, 2 days a week for like 2 hours, but this is going to take at least maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I said, great. What's your fee? So she's like, I'm not sure, Miss Forde, but we negotiated something. She gave herself a job, but she loved to organize things. What do you love to do? So the question is, how do you monetize? Look at the skills that you have. You have gifts. There's something that you do right now really well that people ask you to do, and they would pay you for it if you were savvy enough. That's not the right word. I'm sorry. Forgive me. If you could articulate your value, if you could come up with a package. And when I say a package, I have some videos on the Rich Social Worker channel about how to package and monetize your skills. But it doesn't have to be anything wild and crazy, like Dr. Hardy was saying. Like it can be something that you're doing because you're good at it, or because it's available. You're creative. Use your creativity. You can do this. I've seen students get creative and innovative, and I've seen the exact opposite. Students say, boy, well, I can't, I'm about to too stress out. And then they don't do anything. And so you get to decide. This really is an individual game. And I cannot stress enough, it starts with you and your mindset.
Yeah. I see Peter Juan has been raising his hand. You have a question, Peter? Okay, maybe that's a legacy hand. But the next point I would want to say is the
Right.
you said
Sorry
something.
about that.
Okay, go ahead.
I just got the prompt to unmute, so it kind of goes along the line that Miss Forde was saying as well. Earlier I commented we can look within. There are a lot of skills that we have even outside of social work, but also that social work develop. So it could be a case where you step into a space and you hear that you have a nice voice. It could just be a talking voice, and it could just be something normal, something that you're used to. But the effect that it has is soothing, and it can bring about a certain sense of calm. That is something that you could use as a voice actor. You could do advertisements, you could probably something to be the voice behind the audio book. As I said, there are many methods that are now open. So an exploration into yourselves and really what your capabilities are can lead to possibly endless means of, as you said, money
Yeah.
growth and wealth management.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Peter. You know what I wanted to ask you, Miss Forde, Dr. Hardy and Erica. You mentioned charging a fee. I know personally, I get a little apprehensive when it comes to that because I'm not exactly sure what to charge. And I don't want to overcharge and chase potential clients away. But I feel like if I undercharge, there will seem to be like I don't have bring much value because I'm too cheap. How do you balance that?
I used to have this problem, and until I learned that you don't put a price on something until you use your social work skills and assess what is the scope of the issue, what is the scope of the problem that the potential client needs solved, and how much time is that going to take? How much of not just time, but your expertise. Look, even if you're in school, you didn't just you're bringing lifetime experiential skills, right, to whatever job you're going to do. So I would say before you price anything, get a full scope, because someone will say, oh, I need someone to help me organize this closet, for example. How much would you charge? Before you answer, get very clear. Have you been to the place to assess? Have you measured? Have you seen the amount of, debris or clothes or whatever there is? Have you looked at the time it's going to take you? Have you looked at the containers you're going to have to buy? Like, you need to do a full assessment, and you have those skills, right? But you need to do a full assessment before you even think about putting a fee, a charge on it. I'll stop there. Erica, Dr. Hardy, I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
Okay, I would say absolutely assess for sure. And in some instances where assessment is not necessarily possible, if somebody asks you to present for something or be a part of a workshop or something like that, do your research, find out what the going rate is. That is the rate that you're going to charge within that. You're not going to go below that because that is the standard rate. So, and also be confident in the value that you can bring because your price is your price.
I'm broken. Sorry.
I was going to say, I'll confess, I still have a problem with that. So we're in the same boat. I definitely still have challenges determining an appropriate price, et cetera. Eva talked to me about that before as well, with my products at the same time. But like it was said, researching what is out there, learning about what other people are charging for something similar. So taking those types of steps to at least get an idea or a picture, and then adding in your value and remembering your time, right? So how much time would I need to contribute to this as well?
Okay, one last thing. Because I'm very passionate about this because I gave.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, I have a few videos on the Rich Social Worker YouTube channel that speak specifically to this. One of them speaks about, remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You have the physiological needs at first, right? And then you've got the safety needs, and then we go up from there. And a lot of us social workers, we are stuck at solving problems on the physiological needs or safety needs, or what's the next one after that? The third one? I can't remember. You guys know. We're stuck at those needs, and those needs don't pay a lot. There are clients who have esteem needs, who also have finances to pay for those esteem needs, because they're when I say esteem needs, I mean they've got all of their bills paid for. They're safe. They have all of their physiological needs met. They can travel. They've got work that they enjoy, but there's something missing. They're not connecting with their wife or their husband, and they're going to get a divorce or something, right? And they need someone to give them some perspective. If you're charging them, let's say as a coach, right? Because you've hooked up several of your friends, and people say you're so good at relationships, and you've been in, a solid relationship for this many years, right? So you've learned some things, and people come to you asking you for your experience and expertise. It's going to be cheaper to hire you than it is for them to get a divorce. So those are some of the things that we consider, as well as Erica said, let's look at the market value, but let's look at some higher paying clients. There are clients that don't have money problems, but they have problems that you can solve. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would say is, this is all made up. It's all made up. So there's no right price. You can give your services away pro bono if you'd like, and that's fine. You can also charge thousands of dollars, and I'm talking US dollars, for your service, and that's fine. And I've done both, and I do both right now. There are people that I'm working with right now not charging anything, and there's people that are paying thousands of dollars, and that's because I get to choose. You don't have to be, you don't have to have a hard and fast rule. It took me a while to figure that out. But if you get higher paying clients, they can subsidize some of the pro bono work you might want to do. This is a big conversation, so that's all I can say right now.
So we're coming to a close, but I would just want each of our guests to comment on how can, just in terms of tying everything together, how can social workers navigate this career transition to advance their financial turnaround? We're balancing, we're a helping profession, and we have a heart for the people and the people and the people. But how do you start to think of you, and how do you make that transition to make sure your financial well-being is set.
Just one thing I would say is think about the broadness of social work. And I think that's how we started the discussion today too. And the broadness of where your skills can add value. I think about corporations. There are social workers in corporations, right? And one corporation that I deliver at least yearly workshops to is McDonald's, right? So just for us, especially those going through the social work programs now, to think about many of what we may refer to as contemporary ways where social workers have presence and how we can add value. So starting to broaden the way we think and the way we broaden social work now is one of those ways to start doing that.
I'll agree with Dr. Hardy. Just to think outside of the box, move away from the contemporary roles, move away from what is expected, and look around. There are so many gaps that there, especially here in Jamaica. It is possible to make an impact and to make money. So just look beyond the scope of what you are hearing and what you are used to seeing.
And I just would say the same thing. Also, get with a group, get some support for yourself. If you can't afford a money coach, create a money mastermind. That's one of the things I did. Some of you have friends are on this call with friends. Get together, read a book a month about money and talk about what you're doing. Invite each other to different events that you hear about, whether it's in person or online, but get a support system around this, because this for me is the most important conversation that you can be having, because it underpins almost everything else.
Certainly. And on that note, I would just want to say it would be good for the network of social workers to be strengthened, where we recognize there are opportunities, it's shared with other social workers. Maybe there's a common forum that we could drop these opportunities, whether consultancies, etc., so that we are helping each other within the profession to advance. So on that note, I am just going to now be bringing the session to a close. I just want to say a big thank you to our presenters, our guest presenters today, our guests, Miss Eva Forde, Dr. Veronica Hardy, and Miss Erica Allen, just in terms of helping us as social workers to wrap our minds around how do we monetize and really, I'm going to say, broke out abruptness, because we have to change the mindset of the profession. And on that note, I would just want to say that the upcoming episodes for this podcast will be pop-up supporting the autistic community. That's going to be very exciting, because the community of persons with disabilities is gravely underserved. And the next session will also be back-to-back episodes on decolonizing social work research, education and practice, and adult caregiving. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. Specifically, we would love to thank the team: Shamina Blackwood, Rashad Ford, Camila Brown, Shirai Donna Campbell, Tessie Scott, Drs. Sharon Mackenzie and Joanna Scott. Thank you so much for your time with us. The conversation was enriching, and we do look forward to you joining us again. I would just want to put a plug here again to say, remember, there is a Masters in Social Work program at UWI campus. The link to the brochure is in the chat, and the podcast will be available on YouTube in another 2 to 3 weeks or so. And of course, you can go back to hear all the details. I would want to ask Ms. Forde and Dr. Hardy and Erica, would you be able to share any links and all the materials that you made reference to today, maybe to Dr. Simpson or the social work department, so that the information could be dispatched? I'm going to say on behalf of everyone, the information was rich today. A lot of activities to be done, a lot of practical next steps, tools, materials to consume. And I'm looking forward to see how we can certainly turn our wealth around as practitioners. Any last words for anyone? I don't know. Before we go, let me just check the chat quickly. Someone's asking about the link. There are a number of links in the chat. A number of links are in the chat regarding the information, but the social work unit will dispatch the information by the usual means. So on that note, thank you so very much, ladies, for joining us. Thank you
for
the
having
persons
me.
that joined us online. Excellent discussion, and we look forward to seeing and speaking with you again.
Thank you for having me. Bye,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.